Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode number 251 of the Cognitive Podcast. Yeehaw, off we go. I want to let you know that your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. Please be aware that I will not add you to any of my follower groups currently because I'm getting pushed around by robo accounts and people whose politics make me a little insane. If you need to contact me, you can certainly do it through Ravelry or on the blog. In the meantime, in the warm thanks department, we're wishing our own Danny M. a little bit of recovery. She's been having a cold, I think. And I want to thank her and Loretta 1031 as always. Meanwhile, Steve and Caroline, my British cousins, I hope we're going to reschedule that talk because I was messed up Saturday night from allergies, and so I couldn't get to sleep, and I couldn't call early Sunday morning because I was so wrecked for sleep. So thank you for your patience. And meanwhile, Turbo Gal and DC Elaine Knits are over there discussing boredom on the Ravelry group, I believe. And I want to thank you both because that also made me start thinking about strategies for this week. Of course, I definitely want to thank the folks signing up for Cognitive Fiber Retreat 11. And as always, I want to thank my community on Finch, on Reddit, on the ground in the Santa Clarita Valley and the Antelope Valley, and in this group. They are doing a special theme this month on crafting in Finch. So you can see one of my burbs in the Galapagos wearing, I believe she's got a crafting apron there, and she's got some scissors, and she's got this little bandana that I guess they think those of us who are seamstresses wear when we sew. Can't say I ever have, but I'm sure this application written by two guys knows more about crafting than I do among women. I'm joking. Registration is still open for CFR 11. Details are there in the show notes. Drew Caitlin will be offering an embroidery blackwork class. Our own Lefty Rebel Knitter will be offering a class on Russian graft. This is not Russian join. This is a way to graft seams together. And I was thinking about teaching self-hypnosis, but I'm open to anything the group wants to learn along the realms of relaxation, stress relief, and consciousness. What, you are probably thinking, is on my hooks and needles? Well, let me tell you. Oh yeah, did I mention? I can't wait. Also, bringing the Shacked, bringing an Ashford, and wheels, and hoping somebody will take them. Thinking about $300 each. We'll have bobbins. Looking forward to that. May actually get a third wheel into the car. Not sure which it will be. Would love to. I would love to just move these along. Meanwhile, what's on my hooks and needles? Remember that segment? What's on my hooks and needles? You remember that segment? I'm going to do it now. Okay. First, I finished the water bottle holder for my Moomin water bottle. You can see me there wearing it. This was really a delightfully cobbled together production. I used the base from somebody's pattern that I got for free. And they had this very strange cluster of half double crochet that I could not work out. And then I said, why am I bothering? And instead I did just double crochet chain one. And the next row above, I double crocheted into the chain space and had the chain one above the double crochet. Worked very, very well. When I realized I had enough of a tube, which I just kept sticking the water bottle into measure, and also it will stretch. This is a cotton-based yarn and kind of stretchy and stringy. Then I basically just got to the end of that top row of the double crochet and decided it was time for a strap. And so I did half double crochets across for 8 stitches and then came back. And I just did 8 halves all the way around the strap till I ran out of yarn. When I got to the very end of it, I simply crocheted on to the other side directly across from where I had started. When I look back at this, I realized what I should have done was Tunisian crochet, but I didn't. If I could do this over, I would do it in Tunisian. Tunisian makes a bafo kind of strap for these things. But the half doubles did just fine. In progress. Oh my goodness, I don't think I've messed with the stash toss in a while. So let me say that the stash toss, I believe, is 65 skeins in, 39 skeins out. I have not touched any of the older projects, except I did begin to work again on the September sweater because I realized I'm running out of my summer projects, which is excellent. In the summer projects, the alfresco needs love. I need to go back and just finish it. I'm very close to finish. This is really a shell done in cotton yarn, and I don't like it because the yarn is too heavy, the stitch is too thick. So this is probably going to be a donation to a charity, but it is basically a summer tee, and it's pretty, it's beautiful yarn, but I don't really have another use for a yarn in cotton that heavy. So it will probably go off in the give back box at Christmas, I'm just saying, but we'll see. Meanwhile, I need to finish it first before I make these momentous decisions. Meanwhile, I am working on the last of my lacy shrugs in Noro cotton blends. This is in pink with the usual Noro color variations working their way through, a lot of turquoise, some white, very interesting. And I finally finished the back scarf of it. Now, having finished my multicolored scarf in Noro, where I actually followed the pattern from Lion Brand yarn very closely, I don't want to do that. Why? That pattern takes a lot more yarn than my variation on the pattern. So what I did was I made the biggest chain in the pattern, which is 72 stitches, 72 loops, you know. And then I just did that as the back. And when I finished that, I got it to a width I liked. What was a width I liked? It was a width that I could wrap around my upper arm. Because once I finished that part that would go across from shoulder to shoulder, then I join the corners and just crochet around in double crochet for 10 rows, followed by a row of shells to be an edging. And then I go around the base of the thing, because now the sleeves are connected. So there's this big opening that will be wrapped around my neck and then go down around my back and all that. And I go around that in the shell pattern. This still leaves me with a huge amount of leftover yarn. Whereas if you follow the Lion Brand yarn pattern one, you're going to use up that whole skein of Noro, which I would not mind. In fact, it took a little extra of my skein of the purple Noro that I had changed to my own pattern to finish that. It took more than a standard skein of Noro is what I'm saying. And I would not mind that, except I don't like the fit of it. Because the sleeves are not crocheted in the same direction, because they're just part of the original scarf, they are comfortably fitted at your armpits, but then they just bag out as you go down your arm. So I don't feel it holds on to me well. And to the point where I really considered just taking it apart and starting over, but I won't, because it goes with everything. And it's good enough. But I have to say, that one was a bit of a shock. If I wind my way back to that yarn store, this is a little knittery in Los Feliz, it's possible I'll get another skein and do a do-over and then just give this shrug away. But at any rate, I'm here to tell you, for my money, the lacy shrugs work much better if you just do the shrug, the scarf pattern, the lace pattern from shoulder to shoulder, and you just make it long enough from the base of your neck so that that scarf you've just done would enclose your upper arm, okay, particularly the top of your upper arm, okay, and then from there, when you close the ends, you simply do 10 rows of double crochet to be the arms, and then do a little lacy shell pattern across the edge of the cuff. This worked really well. These fit well, they stay on, they feel comfortable. One of the challenges of little shruggies like this is they often will slide partly off you. They don't stay on well. I tend to wear them over t-shirts. A lot of people wear them over tank tops. I used to, and they would slide off me more. I like the way the t-shirt helps them stay on. Okay, so I'm so close to finishing that pink lacy shrug. Meanwhile, I went to my mending pile. I was feeling very bad because I had this big pile of mending that I was supposed to do in the summer. And I started taking it apart. And what I found was I had a bunch of sweaters. And I was afraid they got mothed. So they're in the back of the Prius of Love, riding around baking in the sunlight. And hopefully that will take off any moth. I didn't see moth specifically, but I just felt like there were little bits of dust that I was worried were moth. So they're in the back of the car. They need very minor mendings. However, I have a rag doll that I bought when I was at Stanford, I believe. Maybe I got her in Washington State in the early 90s, but I think I got her in the late 80s at Stanford. And this rag doll I got interested in, and the problem is she is wearing bloomers, and she's wearing a little blouse that is not pulled in at the waist. It is just fastened around the neck with elastic and at the cuffs of her wrists with elastic. And the elastic on her bloomers at the waist and on the neckline just went. Like it suddenly stretched out and would not stretch back. And I've let her go like this for untold years, seriously, probably 20 years, hating it, but not doing anything about it. And finally, I was sitting in my study looking at these bobbins I have of elastics. I have a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch bobbins. A huge amount of elastic. And I thought, why am I not fixing this doll? And I got very interested in her. I've never gone into doll making, but her name, by the way, is Laura Jane. Laura for Laura Ingalls and Jane for Jane Austen. And Laura Jane's a very interesting character. I took off her clothes and started to really look at her. And so you can see the pictures there of the revitalization project. In the first picture, she's naked. And you can actually see that she has a very simple construction. Her body is a rectangle with an oval connected at a neck. And it is stuffed thinly with some kind of foam. Her arms are each a tube. And the tube has cut into it a thumb. So she's got basically 2 pieces that you sew together like a tube, except you've got this thumb on it. Okay. And her legs are basically the same thing. They are tubes, but they go around an angle to make her boots, her feet. And her legs are in black fabric. Everything else is in a white muslin. Her hair is a hank of brown yarn. And it's very easy to see the construction of it. And they put a little bit towards the front and cut it into bangs, which were cut very badly. They've always been kind of uncomfortably floofy. All right. Now, she had ribbons and she had little rubber bands in her hair and all this. And I took it all apart. And you can see in the second picture, there is her blouse with the neckline not working. I've already taken off the bloomers there and thrown them in the washer. So I washed her white bloomers. Her clothes are basically muslin, cotton muslin. I washed her white bloomers with my whites. And they came out fantastic, but the waistband was gone. And then I washed her blouse in with my normal washed cottons on cold. And it came really well, but again, the neckline elastic is shot. So I really did this slowly. I went into her hair and I looked at taking off her hair and washing it and reconnecting it or putting in a replacement hank. What I found is the middle of her hair is sewn on with this huge thick seam that I don't want to mess with. To take it off, I would really be damaging her head. So I decided to leave the hair. And I thought I can do a do-over with the hair. I can handle it. It's just yarn. Seems like an acrylic yarn, inexpensive acrylic. Okay, so then I took her, once I disrobed her, and I also, by the way, I saw the stitching on the sides of her head where her hair was loosely tacked on with just brown sewing thread. Okay, and there you can see there's a close-up of her face, and you can see her face is very simple. That is seriously 15 minutes of embroidery. It could not be easier. And then you can see the seam in the middle of her hair. This is why I did not take her hair off, because I did not want to play with that seam. And you can see the little stitches holding the hair on the side of her head. Okay. So I took her out, and I took her hair completely out of its bows, had little yellow thin ribbons, 1/4 inch ribbon. And I took out the bows, and I took out the tiny rubber bands. And I disconnected some of the stitches on the side of her head because they were just hanging loose. And then I just wrapped her hair back with a big cloth hairband I have of my own that has elastic in it, so it held it back. And then I took her and I put her in the sink in soak for about 5 hours. When I brought her out of the sink, she looked much better. And I let her sit in my bathtub. I squeezed out all the liquid I could. And then I let her sit in my bathtub on the uphill end so it would drain downhill. And she sat there for about 2 days, and I realized she is never going to dry. So then I realized I had a garment bag that was the perfect size to put her in, and I put her in the dryer. She took a lot of drying, but the garment bag was very tight on her, and it was perfect. And it held her in just perfectly. So she came out of the garment bag looking terrific. I haven't messed with her hair yet. I need to tack her hair down. But meanwhile, I took her little bloomers, and I took my 1/2 inch elastic, and I carefully ripped out a tiny seam on the tube of cloth that was holding the elastic band. And I ripped that very carefully with wee scissors. And then I pulled the elastic band out. It was a 1/4 inch. It was really short. It was also not sewn together. It was knotted to make a circle. And that was not good. I don't think you want that knot. I think you want to sew it down because you want a flat seam on the elastic. So I did that, and then I re-sewed the seam by hand because it was just a little tiny bit, not even an inch. And then I did the same thing. I took out the seam in her neckband of her little blouse and pulled that out and realized I had to use 1/4 inch elastic on that or else really redo that whole neckband seams and all. And I decided not to, and I had 1/4 inch. So I put the 1/4 inch elastic in, and again, it was so tiny I could not machine sew the seam on the elastic. I sewed it by hand, and then I sewed the seam shut carefully. A few stitches showing, but it's in the back under her hair. I'm fine with that. I should not have used the dark thread that I used. I'm not sure why I was using dark thread, but it's okay because it's behind her hair. So what is left of Laura Jane? I really need to sit down and carefully work her hair. I need to find those little rubber bands again if they're still alive, because I think Minerva got towards them. And I need to basically brush her hair, smooth it out, and style it. Decide if I want the 2 side pigtails or if I want to braid it down the back or what I want to do. All of this is very possible. So after I style her hair, I may run a little bit of steam on it to make the hair relax a little bit, and then shape it and tack it down with just a few stitches. And then again, steam her bangs and try to get them to lie a little more flat. All of this sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I suspect that this is probably 15 minutes of work to finish Laura Jane. But it was really interesting to revitalize my rag doll, and a really nice piece of mending. Meanwhile, no work on the quilt squares. I'm full of guilt there. Dizzy blondes, no real work there. It's been too hot. I haven't been spinning. But my spinning is on the electric eel 6.1. So let's go on to a strategy. And the strategy is, why boredom? Because I did talk about boredom before, about our kids not knowing how to be bored. And the question becomes, why boredom? Why does that even exist for us? What purpose does that serve? Well, here's the interesting thing. Somebody did research on using Chat GPT, the app, to write college-level essays. It is a very disturbing study. The link to it is in the show notes. Now, this needs to be validated, but I must say the evidence came through loud and clear, and it was students who use ChatGPT and do not use their own original thinking to write papers, you won't believe this, their brains show deterioration over time. Now, that's a big jump. A lot of things could make your brain deteriorate. Controlling the variables there is a challenge. And so this one needs to be validated. However, when you stop and think, how would you control those variables? The question becomes sort of a null hypothesis. where instead of saying, how can we prove it's ChatGPT doing this, you look at your group of test subjects and you say, what do they have in common? And the answer becomes not much except age. That they all have different hobbies, different outlooks on life, different educations, whatever. They're at different schools, in different programs of study. Yet they're all having brain deterioration by not thinking through their own papers. This is kind of disturbing, and here's what's really disturbing. This, I cannot know enough to validate this. The designer of the study was concerned because he thought the deterioration might be permanent. This is scary stuff because it also leads down the rabbit hole of, are there other programs that are doing this to us? Is it about any program that does not require us to actively think and plan? Or is it just something unique about AI and ChatGPT? I don't know. But what it means is we are supposed to be challenged. When we are not challenged, what do? We get bored. Why do I care? Because boredom can make humans become obsessive. They pick something to challenge themselves because the challenge gives us dopamine, which is happy chemical. So the interesting thing there is, okay, we need to be challenged or we get bored. So why boredom? We're back at, maybe we don't want to look at why boredom. Maybe boredom is simply a resting state. So maybe we need the resting state from time to time. Well, that's interesting because what if we don't give ourselves the resting state? Well, that leads us down to how do contemporary Americans, at least, avoid the resting state? Video games. And video games are not good for us. The evidence suggests over time, if you are using too many of them, you also get brain deterioration. For the simple reason you're not lighting up enough of your brain. Humans are meant to use their whole brain. We are meant to excite as much of it as possible. So when you exercise, for example, I go for a run, I am focused on the ground, trying not to trip because I run on broken rock and broken roads and trail. But I'm also breathing fresh air. I'm using my coordination and my balance. I'm extending long muscles. And I'm observing. I'm using my senses. So when I go for a run, as an example, my brain is lighted up. Really is. This morning, instead of running, I used my exercise desk bike for half an hour. It was very good, but I noticed afterwards I did not feel good the way I feel after a run because I was not challenged, I was not outdoors, my focus was not as directed, etc. So we need that. We need full brain engagement. And after full brain engagement, we need rest, which means we're going to need boredom. We need to turn the systems off. Why is that? Well, you have to go back in another direction. There's a really interesting thing when we do hypnosis. And the idea is hypnosis is this state between official wide awake, alpha state, and asleep. The gamma states and downward, gamma, delta, epsilon, whatever. Okay. Hypnosis, meditation, even a certain kind of dedicated prayer, a trance state, as it will. Those are beta states between waking and sleeping. Turns out beta states extend our lifespan. I went down to the Natural History Museum, and I'll talk about that, and I saw the cat display. And I was thinking, they have this wonderful, wonderful show on it called Fierce about cats. And I was thinking cats live to about 20 years. And we know this, carnivores have short lifespans. And part of it is they can't go into a beta state. They can't rest their brains. Actually, at that show, it seems like carnivores only make it 10 to 12 years, if I go by what they were saying. But my cats make it to 20, so I would say that's the outer limit. So the idea here is we need boredom because it's a resting state for the brain. And we have to manage boredom, which means we meditate, we pray, we craft, we knit, we play music. We are managing the boredom. We are in that beta state, but we are, again, lighting up a lot of our brain and working on managing our own thinking. So why boredom? Because it takes us to that possibility. When you don't have boredom, you put things in your head. You will put thoughts that you cannot control, obsessive thinking. Or you put things like ChatGPT, here, let me make this thing work on my project, and then I'll skim it or edit it. Or you put video games, here, let me do something that it lights up the happy parts of the brain, but does not use enough of the brain, so we get gradual deterioration. This is the downside of not having boredom. We are picking the wrong activities. Now, I just saw a wonderful little video in which one of my colleagues, what does this woman do? She studies stress. She's a researcher. I think she's a psych PhD, but she may not be. She may be in a different discipline. But she was talking about crafting has been shown to do all sorts of good to the brain. And yes, it does. It calms down stress. It reduces trauma in the brain. But crafting also exerts creativity. It helps us. And we get something out of it at the end. You have a sweater or whatever. So why boredom? Because boredom makes us create in fundamentally good ways. And if we don't tolerate boredom, and if we give in to easy solutions like video games nonstop, then we're not resting our brain, we're not producing anything, and we may be, deteriorating the brain. So why boredom? Because boredom drives us to do the good things that humans do. And we do have to learn to tolerate it, and we do have to learn, if we don't want to tolerate it, to replace it with a positive action that promotes brain health and physical health. Oh, shoot. Isn't that amazing? I can't tell you how amazing physiology is, how all this stuff interconnects, and it's so beautiful to me. All right. Meanwhile, remember I'll shoot? Yeah, let's do I'll shoot. I went back to running because I had stopped in the heat, and I realized now my enemy isn't the heat. My enemy is the later sunrise, because if I sleep for an hour after sunrise, it's too hot for me to run. But I'm back to running. I'm not doing anything great, about 1.5 miles. But that's enough because I have the race this Saturday night to be the light. And that'll be good enough. I'll be able to pull out 5K on that. Meanwhile, in my hiking of Los Angeles, this week I decided to do the Natural History Museum, specifically its exhibit about cats called Fierce. And what I didn't realize was in front of the NHM, there is a phenomenal rose garden. And that in itself was worth seeing. And I took the beloved son, and we ended up having a really cool day. On Sunday, I simply went back to Glendale for minor errands, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I will talk about that in the blather. Meanwhile, you can see the links for where to donate your used running shoes, Soles for Souls, or One World Running. Upcoming races, Be the Light 5K. Ha ha ha, my son signed up for the 10. This should be exciting. That is this Saturday night, September 21st. Looking forward to it. You can see my other races. Still looking for that elusive jingle jog, but I will find it. In the fluffy books, I finished The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I loved it. I just loved it. Meanwhile, I was listening to that, so I'm now listening to The Spell Shop. This is about the most tension-free book I can imagine. It's very interesting. Apparently it was a bestseller when it came out. It's very low-key. And the author really wants to tell her story. And she does a lot of interesting things to do that. First of all, our heroine is a book nerd. Bit of an introverted book nerd. But this is one of those stories where she finds out she's really not introverted. She needs to find her tribe. And she does. But she starts out as an isolationist living in a cubicle in a library, quite literally, as a librarian. And of course, the author wants you to think she's a total introvert, except she does have a buddy who's always hanging around with her. I will not tell you what it is. She seems to have blue skin and blue hair. One of the things that goes on is this author does not describe physical appearance very well or very often. Bit of a shame, because she's got some interesting characters. She has mer people, mermaids, etc. She has centaurs, and she really just doesn't bother beyond saying, oh, and she's a centaur. So it's very light that way. Also fairly light on describing a landscape. This is a person who is writing a narrative and she wants to get through the narrative. That's the weakness of the book. I wondered when I listened to it, is she avoiding concerns around any kind of racial stereotyping or any kind of inclusive depiction of characters? I don't know, because it feels weird that she's so light on those descriptions. Nonetheless, it took me a while, but I quite like it. It's light, and it's charming in its own sweet way. Meanwhile, in actual reading, I'm continuing The Mysterious Benedict Society. It's very interesting. It has plot holes you could fly a bus through. It's also got, I think, 2 or 3 sequels. But I'm interested enough that I would want to read those. It's just very curious. I can't see where this author is quite going. It keeps feeling like it's some kind of political metaphor, and yet it just keeps falling a little short of that. But it's interesting. It's totally different. I'm enjoying it. Something I really like. There is a guy on Staten Island. He has a little Quickie Mart kind of store. He is rewarding kids in the neighborhood. It is not a wealthy neighborhood for getting good grades. It started when he told this kid, if you can pull your grades up, I'll give you some kind of, I forget what he gave him, an ice cream cone or something. And the kids started doing it. And this guy started rewarding all the neighborhood kids. He gives them snacks, he gives them treats. To my surprise, if they bring in straight A's, he gives them like $100 bill. And he also will give them groceries in exchange. And there is a heartrending part in the video I saw where this little kid is getting hot dog rolls with his good grades. And of course, this is a wonderful and sweet-natured way to hide the shame of America that a middle-class working family has to use their kids' grades to get enough food to eat. Having said that, there is a link to that video in the show notes under something I really like. And the man has a GoFundMe page. There is a link to that. So yeah, you should go look at both of those. But something I really like, I really salute this shopkeeper for what he's doing, rewarding the kids for good grades. Meanwhile, Project Back episodes on Proton, we're still carrying episodes 1 through 50 of the original series for the rest of this month of September. Put a lid on it. It was salmon bisque time the other day. I just needed me some heavy-duty salmon. Now, this is an easy recipe and I change it all the time. I forgot the cream cheese in it, which I regret. It's a little bit strongly herbal right now, but that's okay. I can always put it in the blender. I can heat it up, put it in the blender, and put some water in it and some cream cheese and it'll work. But essentially today's version, I took a pound of salmon fillets that are wild caught and I sauteed them in a 1/4 pound of butter in the Instant Pot. And when I'd given them 6 minutes each side, I then added another stick of butter, so we're up to a 1/2 pound of butter, and I put that in the Instant Pot to cook for 6 minutes. I did a natural release of pressure. Then I added probably about a cup of sour cream, and I just jammed an immersion blender in it and made it happen. It worked. The immersion blender, not the best idea, but I was so greedy for it, I didn't want to stick it in the big blender, the Vitamix, and lose any of it to the blades at the base of the Vitamix. It's very good. It was wonderful hot. It is now cold in my fridge. 3 tablespoons of it is a meal. On to the blather, shall we? Well, first off, we are using the birthday pavilion. You can see a picture of my husband sitting in it with his lamp. You can see a picture of me. One night I went out and just hung with him. He likes to sleep in it. And I went out and hung with him, and I had to put on my knitted stuff because it was cool out. So you can see me, and I'm wearing a huge amount of my me-made stuff. I'm wearing one of my cotton skirts that I was using while I was seeing patients. I pulled one of the flannel skirts on top of it to get more warmth on my legs because I didn't want to put on leggings. And I walked out wearing fuzzy slippers. And on top of all this, on top of my t-shirt that I was wearing to see patients, a very nice plain one, I put the Mad Mammoth sweater, the Mad Skills Mammoth sweater, and one of my innumerable infinity scarves, and I put on the gold dragon paw gloves. So you can see me sitting out there. It was perfect. I was so warm and cozy and comfy out there, so snugly. You can't see my skirts, but you can see me from the hips up enjoying the Mad Skills mammoth sweater and other things. On Saturday, the beloved son and I went by public transit down to the Museum of Natural History. This is in Exposition Center. This is right by the University of Southern California campus. Very easy to get to. You go down to LA Union Station, and if you're us, you take a bathroom break, and then you get a Starbucks, and then you can pick up any line you want that will take you to 7th Street Metro Station, to the junction there. I think we took the B. And then from there, you pick up the E line, and that will take you to, it's the Exposition line, takes you to Exposition. And it gets, after that stop, it does get a little more, shall we say, criminal. During the day, you're okay, but going down to Expo was okay. We had one or two kind of screamers on the train who were, just a little out of it, but nobody bothered us. So we went down, and then we went through the exhibits. You can see us, I'm imitating the T-Rex that is eating the Triceratops skeletons. They are in the main lobby. My son is not impressed. I'm being a T-Rex. He is not impressed. In the next picture, he is impressed. We went through the Fierce exhibit, which is about cats. And it's really very, very complete. It has the evolution and development of cats. It's got a little bit of history of house cats. It's got the spread of house cats across the world. It's got amazing stuffed cats. You can see all different variations of cats out in the world. The M&H is a really interesting place. It's kind of like somebody's stuffed animal toy collection, the part that I saw. Great t-shirts, though, got to tell you. The Fierce exhibit was worth it. Afterwards, the beloved son wanted this stuffed puma that is P-22. P-22 was a mountain lion that was born, I believe, just above Thousand Oaks. And it crossed the 101 and then the 5. And it crossed the 5 several times. It had a tracking collar because the scientist who tracked him was also tracking his dad. And P-22 became famous because he went on for a long time, like 12 or 14 years. And he kept crossing the freeways without getting killed. Nobody knows how he did this. And meanwhile, they eventually kind of guided him towards Griffith Park, and that became his territory. And when they had the last fire there, we do know he got singed paws. But he lived to a ripe old age in Griffith Park and went back to his motherland, I guess. So my son wanted a memorial stuffy of him. It has a tracking collar on it, very cute. You can see him there, my son. We went to California Pizza Kitchen at 7th and Fig, which is right above the 7th Street Metro Center, which is the junction of so many underground train lines. I got a little black cat tea infuser, and you can see her hanging off the side of my iced tea. And so we had a lovely afternoon, came home. On Sunday, I was a little rattled because on Saturday afternoon on the train home, these people sat next to us and started smoking weed. And I'm very allergic. And I got a blistering sinus headache. I was in agony by the time we got off that train. We did move. It was not soon enough. And this is why I was supposed to talk to my British cousins, Caroline and Steve, and didn't, because I had such a hard time getting to sleep Saturday night. So Sunday I was feeling better. And I just went up to Glendale, and I walked over and had lunch at Sea Butter. And I also went over to the Apple store because I needed some gear. I needed a charger and some cables. And that is the expensive way to do it. I have to tell you, I just don't know a store there that would have cheaper cables. And I'm hitting myself in the face as I say that because I just realized Target. Should have gone to Target. At any rate. So I went over and I got my charger and my cables. And one of the things that was great was I didn't run because I'd gotten up so late and wasn't feeling that great. So I walked. So it was really, really good. I walked, a good 3 or 4 miles and just enjoyed it. And you need a walk. When you're walking through this concrete canyon and you're saying, oh, it's only 1.8 miles. I could do that. And you just do it. It felt a lot better. You can see a picture of the lovely appetizer I had at Sea Butter. I think that's a tuna carpaccio. It was very, very nice. Below that, you can see our phone numbers for our LBTQA plus siblings, because we don't kill people just because they're different than we are. Okay, and so they need help too. And you can see the community resources to find things that I have bought or used in my knitting and crafting. You can see the information around ICE, including the USC Law Students Center for this, and also the apps to report ICE, so you don't have to hang around with those nasties. You can see my calendar of upcoming events, including my upcoming races. That leads me to say Minerva gets the last word, and Minerva's last word is, look how ubiquitous I am. So there are pictures of Minerva, and she's requesting that I put those photos in of her so that you can tell her apart from the little cat tea infuser hanging off the side of my cup of iced tea there, and also so you do not mistake her for the cat on top of the little Fierce exhibit sign. But Minerva particularly likes that sign because it tells you the truth, that she is simply fierce. So how do I have this fierce creature living in my home? It's very simple. And this is the one thing I thought the Fierce exhibit should have talked about and did not. We did not domesticate cats. We domesticated dogs. We bred down wolves. We domesticated them. Cats came in from the cold because we had the goodies. And they pretty basically domesticated themselves. And they essentially adapted to us for their own good. They did not depend on us to breed them. Now humans have a tendency to do that. But the idea is cats are still feroz, as you say in Espanol, fierce. So she wanted me to show you that. And it's important too because cats have chosen community with humans. You knew I would get here, didn't you? Because we are a community, and we do better when we care for the community. And our community can take in all sorts of beings and creatures who don't look or even act like us, and we will still be more rich for that community. When we support the good of the community, we are supporting the good of the individual. Having said that, everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.